just over 200 attempts. He only had 12.9 carries a game and only 2.7 receptions a game. I would expect those touches to double because he is going to be their primary focus. He is their most explosive offensive weapon. And going forward, if they want to be successful in a what could be wide open AFC East, it's going to be on the back of C.J. Spiller. So we're going to see how that works out, especially with a rookie quarterback. And finally, since I am from the Chicagoland area, we do have to cover the Bears. And unfortunately, it's a lot of bad news. A lot of injuries, a lot of guys getting hurt. Some of the bigger ones have been Calvin Hayden, our nickelback, who is out for the year. That's a real problem because the Bears like to run their version of the Tampa 2, but their version typically has 2 linebackers and 3 corners in. And that nickelback is called on to do a lot. And without Calvin Hayden, the Bears are going to be looking at a really glaring spot of need. If they don't like somebody on their team, I wouldn't be surprised to see GM Phil Emery try and make a last-minute trade before the regular season starts. And in addition to that, we've got Earl Bennett, the slot receiver, battling concussion symptoms again. Earl Bennett, I believe, is in a contract year, and I wouldn't expect for him to be re-signed. He's had far too many issues with injuries, and he is a very talented receiver and one that the Bears don't want to let go, but he is unreliable and he keeps getting hurt. And if he can't play a full year this year, I wouldn't expect them to bring him back unless they could do it at a veteran minimum. In addition with that, Alshon Jeffrey has been having hamstring tightness, and that's been a major problem because he was hurt a lot last year, and he's our second-year receiver who is expected to take a lot of pressure off of Brandon Marshall. So with those 2 receivers being hurt, the Bears have been looking for somebody to step up. And they have found one guy, an undrafted rookie out of Texas Southern, a guy named Joe Morgan. He's been getting a lot of first-team reps. And according to a lot of the reports coming out of camp, he's been looking pretty good.
He looks like Jerry Rice out there.
He's got a long way to go, but I think right now, I think they're going to have him slated as the 4th receiver behind Marshall, Bennett, and Jeffrey. And who knows? If Bennett goes down, they might even sneak him into the slot receiver spot. So we'll see how things progress, but the Bears do have some work to do on that offense, and they're trying to underneath new coach Mark Trestman. Well, that has been around the training camp league. I'll also be updating you as the weeks go by on other teams. I am Chris Stanton, and you're listening to the CSBS Sports Edition. If you'd like to make any comments, please call our number at 630-534-0779. And our next segment, I want to talk about the St. Louis Rams. They've been doing something kind of interesting under Coach Jeff Fisher, and they've been taking a lot of risks. We know in the draft, one of the main things that teams look for is character and the prospect of players getting in trouble while they're on the team. The Rams seem to have pretty much foregone that type of analysis, and they seem to be going for talent only. Returning to the team this year, they have Janoris Jenkins, who's in his 2nd year. In 2009, he was arrested for resisting arrest after he'd gotten into a bar fight after claiming that somebody tried to steal his chains. When the cops arrived on the scene, he was uncooperative and started to walk away, and they ended up having to arrest him for resisting arrest. They also have Cortland Finnegan, who was brought over from the Tennessee Titans and who is also a disciple of the Jeff Fisher regime. And he's always had a reputation as a dirty player. He got into a fist fight with Andre Johnson, who's one of the classiest players in the league, and he's been known to take a few cheap shots. And he's never, ever been known as a locker room leader. This year in the 1st round, they drafted Alec Ogletree, who had a lot of question marks, and then days before the scouting combine got a DUI. I mean, literally, days before essentially his job interview, he got a DUI. And then they even tried to sign Titus Young. To their credit, they released him 2 weeks later, but that's because he got arrested 3 times in a 2-week span. When that happens, that's pretty much a no-brainer. So the Rams are really putting their eggs in a lot of questionable baskets. And the problem with that is so much of what they're doing is dependent on these guys. Janoris Jenkins and Cortland Finnegan and Alec Ogletree are all going to be starters on this year's Rams team. These are all going to be key components of the Jeff Fisher defense in St. Louis. And obviously, if the gamble works out, it's going to be great. But most teams will gamble on one player and maybe gamble on a player in late rounds. They gambled with a first-round pick and one high-priced free agent in Cortland Finnegan, and then another high draft pick in Janoris Jenkins, who was also a first-round draft pick. So that's another thing to look out in St. Louis. They have got a very good up-and-coming young team. That defense is solid, and they were able to go toe-to-toe with the 49ers last year, going 1-0-1. Both very exciting games, and that Sam Bradford, if they get him some weapons to throw to, which they did in a Tavon Austin, then they're going to have some chances to do something special. But if these players start blowing up in their face, then they could go to the bottom of the barrel real fast and could be a top 5 picker in next year's draft. So that's something to keep your eye on and to see how the Rams progress this year in what is arguably the toughest division in football. Our next segment is brought to you by T-Lander and T-Lander. Have you been arrested or accused of a crime? It can be a life-altering experience. So if you find yourself in that situation, you need the best representation. With a combined 60-plus years of experience, T-Lander and T-Lander can handle any situation, from traffic tickets to felony charges. Based out of DuPage County, T-Lander and T-Lander is the firm you need to get the results you want. Call now at 630-858-0880 to set up your consultation. T-Lander and T-Lander, simply the best. Some other topics from around the league and from around sports is one that caught my eye was Shabazz Muhammad. Shabazz Muhammad was a first-round draft pick by the Minnesota Timberwolves for the NBA. And there was a lot of question marks regarding his character because during his 1 year at UCLA, he had a number of problems, including lying about his age and falsifying his age, which came out after the tournament, so he never had to miss any games for that. But he was set for 3 games for receiving improper benefits. And this was all reported by the LA Times. And there was a lot of hubbub about him coming out of UCLA and whether this is a person that you can rely upon. He is undoubtedly talented and could be a top scorer eventually in this league. But a lot of people question his work ethic and his mental makeup. And just another problem that he's had was this year's rookie program. After the first day, he was dismissed from it because mere hours after receiving the rules and expectations of this program, he violated the rules. In this case, he brought a woman back to his hotel room. Now, obviously, this is not a huge deal. It's not like he, robbed a liquor store, caused a fight at a stripper club, or what have you. He didn't take drugs, didn't do anything like that. But it's just another example in a long line of problems that he's had showing his immaturity. This program for rookies is set up to teach incoming rookies about a number of things, specifically money management, ethics, their responsibility and ability to use social media. And features alcohol and drug education, and here's the stay he should have made, image maintenance. And that's something that a guy like Shabazz Muhammad needs. It's one of the things the Minnesota Timberwolves were really hoping to pound into him, the fact that he is now an NBA player and no longer a college kid. And they were trying to bring him along. And being thrown out of this program after the first day does not bode well for him going forward in the future. And obviously the Timberwolves cannot be happy about this progression. And so he'll have to repeat the program next year with the new incoming crop of rookies. But that's their problem, and we'll probably talk about that more as the NBA season gets closer. Another thing to keep in mind is Major League Baseball. With the football starting and certain news items coming about by Biogenesis, it's important to remember that we've got a playoff race going on in Major League Baseball, and there are some good ones. The American League, in particular, has a lot of teams that are still fighting for that spot. For instance, the Rangers and the Oakland A's are fighting back and forth for the first place spot in their division. And right now, they're separated by half a game. The Rangers just overtaking the A's and are up by half a game, which puts the A's squarely in first place in the wild card. But that second wild card spot has a lot of teams battling for it, including the Tampa Bay Rays, who were the hottest team in baseball, going 26-6 ever since the return of David Price, but have now just lost 6 in a row and gone 2 of 8 in their last 10. They're now 4 games behind the Red Sox, and the Baltimore Orioles are creeping up on them for that second wild card spot. And 2 other teams to keep your eyes on, surprisingly, are the Cleveland Indians and the Kansas City Royals. The Cleveland Indians have kind of tapered off, and they've been a very streaky team all year. But if they can get on one more hot streak, then they can make a real run at it. But the Royals have gone 7-3 in their last 10, and they're 4 games behind in the wild card. But they're gaining ground, and they're looking good. And as all sports fans know, that there is a lot to be said about a team getting hot at the right time. And when a team gets hot at the right time, anything can happen. And right now, they're hot, and they're really, really looking good. In addition to that, we've got what could be turning into a great MVP race in the AL. Miguel Cabrera, who is looking to get his second consecutive Triple Crown, be the first person ever to do so, has got some competition from Chris Davis, first baseman of the Baltimore Orioles. Here's how their stats match up. Cabrera is first in the league in batting average with 366. He is second in home runs with 37 and first in RBIs with 111. Chris Davis has a 300 batting average, is first with 43 home runs, and is second with 110 RBIs. Their stats are neck and neck. Now, Cabrera's team is first in their division, and they have that pretty much locked up, barring some epic collapse. But Chris Davis has the Baltimore Orioles knocking on the brink of another playoff berth in a smaller market and what could be argued as a tougher division with the Red Sox, the Rays, and even the Yankees, who, despite being out of the playoff race, are still above 500. So there's a lot of different variables that come into this, but those 2 guys right now are the leading contenders for the MVP, and it's fun to watch, especially since Chris Davis just hit another home run the other night to put his team ahead in the game. Some other players to keep an eye on, this Yasiel Puig. He is the best player in baseball right now, or at least the most fun to watch. And his stats aren't overly impressive. Like, he's got a huge batting average at 371 and a huge on-base percentage at 435. But he's only got 11 home runs and 27 RBIs. But he lifts his whole team. Before he came to the Dodgers, they were in last place. Well in last place. Since then, they've been the hottest team in baseball, and he has turned that team from worst to first almost single-handedly. They've got a great pitcher in Clayton Kershaw, and they've got other great players around him, but the spark he has provided that team, it reminds me of the year the Giants went to the World Series against the Angels with Barry Bonds. You take Barry Bonds off that team, and that is a team that doesn't even compete for the wild card. That's how the Dodgers are with Yasiel Puig. Without him, they are not a playoff team. With him, they are a legitimate force to make the World Series. So he's been incredibly fun to watch. And then you've got the likely MVP of the NL, which is Joey Votto. There's been no real dominant performances in the NL. There's been some great pitchers, which will make the Cy Young race very interesting. But there's nobody that stood out really as an MVP. So that's why I think Joey Votto has got the lead on this one. He tends to be at the top of almost every significant hitting list. He's got a 98.8 fielding percentage at first base, and his team is pretty much a lock to make one of the wild card spots for the playoffs. And he's widely recognized as one of the best hitters in baseball. He's known for having a great eye. He leads all of baseball in walks. He's got a 436 on-base percentage. And for a guy who hits third, he's got a 322 batting average and is 79 runs. So he has been a phenomenal all-round player for the Cincinnati Reds, leading them to what looks like should be another playoff spot. So barring some last-minute heroics from somebody else in the league, I think he will probably be your favorite for the MVP this year. And then there's some other stories around baseball as well. As I mentioned, the NL Cy Young race is really heating up. You've got Clayton Kershaw, Matt Harvey, and Adam Wainwright, which are probably the 3 main contenders for that award. Clayton Kershaw leads all of baseball with a .188 ERA. I mean, that is insane. A .188 ERA less than 2 runs per game is unbelievable.